Greetings everyone, Baldus here. In this video I'm going over my final build setup for Pulverise Druid, optimized for level 100. Both gear and the skill tree have stayed largely the same, with a few small changes, but the Paragon Board has been significantly altered to optimize both damage and survivability. This build becomes an increasingly broken AoE clearer, with good tankiness when pushing higher tier nightmare sigils. However, single target is still the only weakness of this build, and it will not improve until we get some kind of passive spirit generation. I'll let you watch the showcase and I'll be back with the full gear, skill tree and Paragon Board. Welcome back everyone. So firstly I'm just going to briefly go over the gear and the skill tree and just cover the main changes that I've made to the build. And then we're going to dive into the Paragon Board where the bulk of the changes have been made. So for the gear, of course we still want to go Vasili's Prayer and Insatiable Fury. Now for the gloves, I'm going to note an important stat priority here. And I found that attack speed is one of the most useful stats for this build, as it helps just to pump out a few more pulverizes within a set period of time, helping to gain resource back and just overall DPS increase. You also want to try and get 3 or 4 ranks to pulverize. Critical strike damage with earth skills is good, and critical strike chance is also a good stat to have, as outside of Grizzly Rage, we're still able to do quite a significant amount of damage with our criticals. Now what we've done with the pants is we've changed it we've changed the aspect from Mending Stone, which buffs Earthen Bulwark, and instead we've gone for Disobedience, which increases our armor when we deal damage. In this game currently, armor seems to be scaling the best as a defensive option, so we can remove the Earthen Bulwark duration as it's no longer necessary. I believe this provides a larger buff to our overall survivability. Earthen Bulwark is still useful for that CC break and Unstoppable, but for only 3 seconds, which can help outside of Grizzly Rage if you get into a tight situation. Additionally, for the stats on the legs, you want to try and find anything to do with survivability. So we've got dodge chance against close enemies, damage reduction while fortified, and damage reduction from close enemies. Other good stats include armor while in werebear form. Nothing's changed with the boots. We still need to have the quicksand aspect. Movement speed is nice, and spirit cost reduction also. For the weapon, I'm just going to clarify that axes are possibly the best in my opinion, but staffs are not too far behind. Very, very close in terms of DPS overall. The reason why I like axe is just for that initial hit against damage to healthy enemies, so we can one-shot enemies more often when clearing dungeons. Stats on the weapons, core skill damage is your preferred main stat. I also like to take the all stats as well, just to help gain those bonuses in the Paragon Board. Damage to stunned enemies is a mid tier 1. I'm still looking for a better axe, but something like damage to slowed enemies would be far better, as that's always up on our mobs. Of course, you want to get the Pulverize aspect in here and try and get as high number as possible. So for the amulet, there's a few things that have changed, but the aspect has stayed the same. I've only got a 6 out of 8 seconds here, so it could still be improved. But what's key here, if you can find the stats like the willpower increase percent, it's very nice for just overall damage increase. And then also +3 ranks of Crushing Earth passive is a really nice thing to get on necklaces. I don't know if you've noticed, but necklaces can drop with these passives that increase your these passives here on the skill tree. These passives grant quite a lot of increased damage. So originally this was 15% and now it's 30% increased damage, so a flat 15% buff just from the necklace. I mean, I think all the necklaces can drop any passive on our skill tree, so just try and find something that fits the build if possible. Additionally, trying to get cooldown reduction is also useful, just so we can get into our Grizzly Rage more often. For the rings, the imprints changed slightly. I found that the retaliation aspect is a bit better in more circumstances, so this increases our damage based on our amount of fortify, and we should always have 100% fortify up. So I just feel like this offers a bit more overall damage than the Crash Stone aspect. For the stats on the rings, I found that physical damage is really good, as it just increases our flat damage in any circumstance. It doesn't have to have a requirement of being close or slowed or CC'd or anything like that. Critical strike damage is also good. Bit of lucky hit chance just for those Earthen Might procs, and crit chance for outside of Earthen Might procs. Of course, we still want the Umbral Ring, as this is very important for our spirit generation. And again, stats include physical damage, crit chance, a bit of maximum life for survivability, but you can change them around depending on what you find. In the description, I'll have a full planner, and in the notes section, I've listed a stat priority for offense and defense. So I'll just briefly go over the spirit boons. So for the first one, take reduced damage from elites, still the best one in this tier. Now for the eagle, there's 3 options here you can either take. you can take the maximum life for just more survivability to avoid those one-shots. You can also take attack speed if you just want to have a bit more DPS, and then you can either take critical strike damage for more damage as well. All three of these options are good, so just pick what you prefer. For the wolf tree, of course, we still want Calamity for the extended duration of our Grizzly Rage. And then for the final row, we still want Critical Strikes, Heal Us, and Calm Before the Storm for the cooldown reduction. So that does it with the gear and spirit boons. Now briefly go over the skill tree, where there's a few changes. So everything remains the same with the Earth Spike, Pulverize, Wild Impulses, and the crit chance. Nothing's changed here. What's changed here is I've took 2 points out of this Ancestral Fortitude. Currently in the game, non-physical resistance seem to do nothing, so I've taken these points out as they could be spent better somewhere else. Still keep our Earthen Bulwark, and then I just want to note for Debilitating Roar. This passive, which slows enemies when used, is very nice just to gain your spirit back up when using the aspect of the Umbral Ring, where you gain spirit based on when you CC an enemy. So it's a very large radius, so you can just roar into many enemies and your spirit pool should go up to max depending on the enemies. Just a nice start to like a mob pack or any dungeon. We want to take the 3 points in Nature's Reach, as our shockwave will be hitting distant enemies, and then it's doubled against slowed enemies as well. I've also picked up this Mending. This just helps our survivability as we're gaining healing from our critical strikes from the spirit boons. So we're just gaining a bit more healing there when we start to lose health. And then I've just picked up 1 point of this as it was left over. It just means because we're always in werebear form, we're just getting an extra bit of damage with our guaranteed overpower every 30 seconds. Of course, you want to take all of these 3 earth nodes and try and get the ranks on a necklace to something of these. Something I've changed is I've took out resonance. 3 points in here seemed like a waste, as it was only a 6% increase with this current setup. So the points were better spent elsewhere. You still want to take all of these passives. And then of course Grizzly Rage and Earthen Might. So now let's get on to the big change, which is the Paragon Board. So this is for level 100, so it's with max Paragon Boards with all renown done as well. So we're utilizing the full amount of Paragon points. So for the first board, we're gonna take this setup for the nodes, and we're gonna use a vulnerable glyph called Exploit. The reason why I've took this in the first board is that we can take the most efficient route to our next board while also gaining the 25 dex bonus in order to apply our vulnerability to enemies. When you get more points, you also come back down here and take the maximum life just for survivability. So for our first connecting board with this build, it's gonna be Survival Instinct this time. This is our execute when in werebear form, so we just deal more damage to lower health enemies. This board, you want to take almost every node here, as they're all very useful. But the glyph we're using is Fang and Claw. So originally I didn't use these kind of glyphs that grant bonuses to all magic nodes within range, but I found that they are very good for giving us more stats and then also more bonuses to our magic nodes. So we're actually gaining, at max rank, you gain 150% more bonus to these passives here. And with the stat nodes, you're also gaining that bonus to intelligence, which helps you meet like these brackets here. Like it requires 540 intelligence to gain the bonus, which just helps overall min-max the build. In this particular tree, what I'm really interested in is the total armor while in werebear form. Now, I mentioned how armor is considered the best form of defensive capability in the current state of the game. It could change, but currently armor seems to scale best. So just to talk through this board, you want to go here and take the werebear skill damage. Don't take the overpower nodes, as we're no longer trying to scale overpower, because we're rarely really hitting with overpower anymore due to the obsidian slam nerf. You also want to take your damage to healthy enemies, which is very nice and synergizes well with the axe. Additionally, you want to take your damage reduction while fortified, because at level 100, when we're pushing a bit higher nightmare sigils, we really need that tankiness just so we don't die as much. The damage is very good with this build, so it's really just tankiness that we're trying to balance out with our damage. So we're taking more damage to healthy enemies, and then we also want to, before you move on to this top board, you want to attach this spirit board, Ancestral Guidance, and just quickly take this node, including the rare node for +2 spirit on kill. When you have like a max umbral ring, you no longer need to invest in more spirit on kill, so you only need one of these just in order to get to that Ancestral Guidance for that 30% increased damage. So after you've took this, you want to move up and attach the next board, Earthen Devastation. The main glyph we're using in here is werebear, and the reason I picked werebear here is because the nodes in this board synergize best when picking up willpower in order to increase the overall bonus. See, in this case we've got +65 out of 40 willpower, so we're only missing 5 points to gain the maximum, but it wouldn't be worth to go and get this node for that. Additionally, here we've got critical damage with earth skills and a bit more resistance to all elements, but we found out this resistant to all elements is kind of in a weird position in the current state of the game. We also want to take damage to crowd controlled enemies and earth skill damage. So now we're going to move on to this. This is just a nice efficient kind of route where we just use a board in order to gain some bonuses from the glyph. So in this case, we're going to be using Earth and Sky. It's another bonus to all magic nodes glyph, and it also gives our nature magic skills 10% increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. So that includes any enemies that are also slowed. We can also gain a lot of maximum life with the bonus, and then also some more stats. Yeah, this is just a really nice maximum life. We're gaining almost 20% maximum life plus just from this, which is very significant. As you saw, I was at 19,000 max life, which really helps with tankiness in those high nightmare dungeons. We can also get nature magic damage here, and then a few more stats to meet our breakpoints. So just to clarify, the breakpoints that I'm talking about is as you get further into your Paragon board, these stat checks require higher and higher stats. So this one's 540 intelligence, and if I go to this board, it's only 345 willpower. So as you move through the boards, these stat checks get higher and higher, but it doubles the bonus from the rare nodes, so it's useful to get in order to min-max your damage potential on the board. But coming down to this, we're just using this same board here, the Ancestral Guidance, but we're attaching a few nodes into here in order to get our final glyph slot. In this glyph slot, we're using Undaunted, which increases our damage while fortified, but the bonus also reduces our damage taken the more fortified we have. Most of the time we should be at 100% fortified with this build, so that's another 10% damage reduction to help our survivability. We've also got core skill damage in this area, and a bit more resistant to elements, but I already discussed that before. So that's everything with the gear and the Paragon board. I just want to clarify that this build is very strong at clearing like high density dungeons. It's very comfy, very tanky, great resource generation on high density, but again, it still lacks in that single target. Some bosses can feel quite slow just because we can't gain our resource generation back. I've tried to find a way to make it better, but currently in the game, I just can't find a way to make our single target better without kind of ruining our AoE clear potential. Hopefully, Pulverize can get some kind of benefits to resource generation or in the future, but that's pretty much where we stand at the minute. Once again, everything's in the description on the build planner, and then we've got the stat priority in the notes. And yeah, that's pretty much everything with this build finalized at level 100. If you have any comments or ideas, put them in the comments section. And also check me out on Twitch at Baldus Maximus. I'm streaming most days now, so I'll thank you if you come and hang out there. I'm going to be making more druid builds. I'm going to be experimenting a bit more now that I've finished the level 100, so we could have some cool, wacky new ideas. Once again, thanks to everyone watching the YouTube. It's blown up quite a lot recently, and I thank everyone for subscribing and supporting. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Cheerio.